I was absolutely hanging out to get to this stage to glass these. I thought I'll be comfortable, I'll be sitting on flat ground. The slope here is just so friggin' uncomfortable. After my little Friday frenzy the other day, putting in these bulkheads, I've actually filleted all these in all the way along the hull and down into the crash bulkhead in here, as you remember. It's time to turn my attention to these wing frames. I've already prepared, as you can see, I've sanded where I'm going to tab these. I've prepared the underside of the wing frame with a slight cove so that I get a really nice surface area to bond the adhesive to. And I'm going to place these in place, and then I'm going to put a screw through the bulkhead just to hold it in place until it sets. The idea is I'm going to do all of these wing frames along the front here until get those done, and then I'm going to lift the bulkhead out, and I know that it's dead square, the whole thing's set. All I need to do then is laminate the bulkhead, stick it in, and then I can start flow coating these chambers out. Now these wing frames are around about 6 feet long and constructed of 20mm H80 foam with 2 layers of 300 CSM and 2 layers of 600 double bias laminated on each side. Now that is in compensation for the fact that they were supposed to be 12mm marine ply with 2 layers of glass on each side. However, the weight saving is substantial. It's probably around half of the weight. So in all, around about 150 kilos to 200 kilos of removed weight out of the bow. Now, given that the bow of my catamaran is a solid bridge deck and has a metre of clearance under the bow, this boat has performed well in the past as both a power cat and a sail cat, and the clearance is enough that the slamming is not as prevalent as you would get in other models. So the solid bridge deck requires a lot of stiffening now, so these wing frames provide a structural and also a secondary purpose of providing good storage up in the bow. So I've got oodles of storage up in the bow of this boat, and also a very high bridge deck. So hopefully there's going to be less slamming in this boat as we head into more or bigger seaways. But also in the anchor well in the centre of this boat, I modified again to make it more usable, and by using the bulkhead I was able to determine a dead straight upright. And the positioning of that was, very pleasing to be able to put all these in, and then I'll be able to lift that bulkhead out, remove it back to my factory, give it a laminating, and whack it in once and for all, ensuring that I'm getting the correct position on all of the components up in the bow there. So each wing frame was removed, sanded, coved and beaded in the foam there, so I got maximum surface area, as I'll mention later on, and then put in place, and basically the whole process went through pretty quickly. There's tons of prep in this job. That's so much preparation, and in fact I was so looking forward to getting up onto that flat surface, failing to remember that it wasn't actually a flat surface. It's not overly comfortable, pretty hard on the old knees and hard on the hips, and I spent a lot of time, several days up in this area here, sorting this whole palaver out. Now you'll notice also when I'm filleting these wing frames that I use a cup and a stirring stick. I mean, I have actually used piping bags in the past to fillet bulkheads. I've found that this way I'm able to get maximum amounts of adhesive underneath the actual wing frame and make sure that cove that I'm putting into it is actually filled. If I was piping it in from the side, I would struggle to get the amount of adhesive required to get the maximum bond with the adhesive all together. So there's different methods of thought, and I've had quite a few people say, why don't you use piping bags, Glad bags or Ziploc bags with the end cut off them. That's my reasoning, is I'm trying to get the stuff underneath these and put them in place at the time of adhesion. They're not sat in place and then bonded in with just a simple radius. They're actually bonded underneath and on the side, and then the radius, yes, not quite as neat as using a piping bag, but certainly the beauty of this stuff is it sands very well and it's very easy to achieve a radius, and I was able to do that with my Dremel tool with that small drum sander. There's a whole lot of extra prep in this mode as I'm going forward. However, it does create a nice neat finish, and I was able to get this whole forward bow section done in a matter of a couple of days, and you know, that was pretty quick progress, and it's so good to see this thing growing out of its hull. So I've just reduced the size of this anchor locker by about 10 centimetres in length. Why I did that is because this compartment over here was virtually unusable, and giving me an extra 5 or 6 centimetres means that I can fit fenders or anything in there that are light. But when it was over here, it was basically going to be useless for anything other than you know, putting ropes and lines and sheets and stuff. So I've decided to reduce this by 10 centimetres. There's still ample room there for chain, and obviously any sort of spare road or anything that I need in there. And my windlass is going to sit almost centre, so that it will drop directly into the middle of the deck there. I'm going to then reinforce the floor here, and obviously treat it so that I don't have too much noise in there, or maybe there's some carpet or something, not really sure, something that's removable so I can clean it out for sure. I've just marked this all out. You can see the black line there, so as I start to pull this apart, I'm going to get a good feel as to what I need to do. So remember, the process is sand, a styrene wipe, and then you know, put it in place. I've made up some temporary braces here that I can clamp on there to hold it in place. It only takes about an hour for this stuff to really set hard. I mean, that there I did about 2 hours ago. It's rock hard, and yeah, so pretty quick process filling these in. Once they're in, then I can come back and glass the whole lot. But yeah, this has been a very satisfying process, getting these glued in, knowing that they're there for good. Now, as I set this box in place, I thought it might be a good time to have a bit of a chat about how I'm going to set up this this anchor well. I am inclined to put a horizontal windlass in there. Basically, the chain comes up through the centre of that box there and then drops onto the floor or onto the bridge deck. Now, the original boat that, or in fact the most recent boat that was made out of this mould employed a barrel winch, which intrigues me because I've actually discussed at length with a couple of the manufacturers, and they're incredibly powerful units with very easy to replace items on them. So there is definitely a positive to using them. I'm not convinced about the amount of stress and strain it's going to put on that bulkhead, because that's where it'll ultimately be mounted to. But they are very quiet in their operation, and they're also less mess. There's a lot less mess with a barrel roller. As you can see, the guide roller there just above the barrel, and all the chain is contained on the roller itself. Now, I've had a couple of discussions with some manufacturers, and they seem to think that this boat's not too big for one of those. In fact, a lot of them do employ these types of windlasses, but I'm still out to lunch on the idea. And you know, at the end of the day, I don't know why we shouldn't try to improve things, but you know, if anyone's got any advice, please leave a comment. I'd be interested to hear what you say. In the interim, while I'm working your way up in this hot, stinking hole, I tend to dream of this view, which is actually the sailcat version of our boat sailing up on the northern New South Wales coast. So I'll leave you with this and get back to work. But you can see the sort of mess I get into, you know, just having the right gear here. I've got my acetone bucket, my box of cloth, the sea light, which is my adhesive, and then my catalyst, styrene, sandpaper, and all this crap. And because I'm working in one region, I've had to move everything out. So I've got this other pile of stuff, bulkheads, yeah, modules, and it's just a matter of lifting and moving stuff around on a daily basis so that I can get access. Now, in reality, I should move all these modules out of here, but I'm not going to. It just slows me up. I'm able to sort of move them back, move them forward, move them up onto the bridge deck. It does squelch my style up here a bit because I like a neat room, but so I'm better to keep powering along and then ultimately wait till I've got a team, do it all at once. But yeah, we're in a bit of a state here at the moment. I'm quite happy at this stage of where I'm at, and I'm pretty much careering ahead with that bulkheading up here. I'm then going to move across the top here, get these wing frames all tabbed in, and then I'll move down the port side and underneath, and then I'll be able to start installing stuff, which is great.
Morning everyone. Time to start tabbing these guys in. So what I've done is I've just given it a styrene wipe that's had a complete sand, and then I lay down one layer of 600 cloth there dry. I then wet that out and then immediately put a second one on that's around about 2.5 centimeters wider on each side, so that the first tab is a shorter tab and then the second one's a longer tab, and that ensures I get like double grip on these bulkheads, but they're never going to move once they're in place here. So I'm about to start glassing them in. Yeah, so I've got a pretty big day ahead on my knees. I've been sort of looking forward to getting up here, but after spending a few hours yesterday sanding and cleaning these up, these fillets,
Now the tabbing of these wing frames, I've basically cut tape around about 1.2 metres long. That's pretty much as long as I could do in one piece. Now they're 150 mils wide, and then the second one is 200 mils wide. And you'll see here, and I've actually put in a diagram out of the Australian boat building standard manual that I'm working to, and it shows the tapering of the bulkhead tabbing. It's very important that that tabbing is tapered and not just multiple layers bunched up upon each other, because what I'm trying to do is get maximum surface area, but also get zero bubbles in that region around the radius. But also by tabbing and tapering outwards from the bulkhead, it's actually ensuring that there's plenty of strength there. Now that diagram actually shows, and you can see me here putting in the wider piece of cloth. Now that's a 600 double bias. I'm also making sure the orientation's correct as well, but I'm just going to point it out here. I'll just pull a piece away and show you that I've actually increased the margin by 2.5 centimeters on each side. Now I mentioned that earlier, it's so important, and once again, if you have a look at this photo, it's not a great drawing that I'm putting up. You can actually see that extra tapering that's involved, and that should be adhered to on every single bulkhead that's tabbed in place. Very, very important stuff. The final finish of the product is basically to put down some peel ply. It's just a strip. I cut that at 300 mil, so I'm once again making sure that the margins of the tabbing are actually wetted out, and essentially that's a perfect way to finish them. That's all you need to do.
I'm going to be one happy guy to see the end of this tabbing. I've been going for about 4 hours or so, just doing these wing frames here. Essentially, there's two layers of 600 double bias. One is 150, so you're getting 7.5 centimeters on each angle. So 7.5 centimeters, 7.5 centimeters. And the next one is 200, and what that does, it overlaps by 2.5 centimeters on each side. So you're ending up with a layered tab that layers over the top. So you're getting two essential bonds in one, rather than just putting layer upon layer upon layer all the same width. By overlapping them, you're getting that extra strength. I was absolutely hanging out to get to this stage to glass these. I thought I'll be comfortable, I'll be sitting on flat ground. The slope here is just so friggin' uncomfortable. You're sliding on your ass or on your knees down on raw fiberglass, and luckily I peel plied it all. It's pretty smooth, but it's tough on the knees. That last one to do, and then if I walk you over here, you can actually see these ones aren't in. And the reason why they're not in is because I need to lift this module in and out a few times, because since I've glassed the bulkheads in, guess what? It doesn't quite fit. I'm about 3 or 4 millimeters from having that fitting perfectly, because that bulkhead, now it's glassed in, must have been 2 or 3 millimeters back, and that's not going all the way down. So I'm going to have to do some slight mods down there, but that's all good, because I did actually put in thicker bulkheads than was required. But I've still got another 2 full wing frames to glass in here and tab and fill it in. But yeah, once I'm done there, I'm able to then start moving into this stage where I can start glassing all of these along here. So yeah, there's plenty going on. It's it's very pleasing to be getting these things permanently in place so that I can then move forward. But I'm a bit shattered. So I've been deliberating how I'm going to do the floors, how I'm going to tab them onto the hull of my Cat, obviously putting a floor down, I'm going to have to get underneath it and glass underneath the floor substrate. So I was having a chat with the guy a couple of months ago, and he used to work in a boat building factory, and he said, mate, get some angle, some composite angle, and just epoxy them to the level you want and glue them down. So I did a bit of research, and ATL Composites here in Australia sell a fiberglass or an epoxy angle that's actually got unidirectional and biax, double bias cloth laid, and it's actually made in a press. So unlike using an aluminium 90-degree angle, which I really can't use in a boat, they make a composite angle which is basically proven to be stronger than tabbing, a lot less effort, and I can glue it on with an epoxy adhesive and essentially save myself tons of time. In fact, you can kerf it, you can use it on all the bulkheads. So I've done a little bit more research, had a look at companies in Australia that make kit boats and make custom-made boats, and that seems to be what everyone's using. So I came up with the decision a couple of months ago that was how I was going to do it, and I'm about to start heading in full on into that process. And luckily today, it's all just arrived. So I've got 2 big boxes full of this little guy. Now look at that. You can tell by looking at it, you've got a 45 and a 45, and then on the outside, it's actually a 90-degree and a 0-degree bias. So at the end of the day, it's like a quadraxial. It's actually made in a press, so it's done under pressure with epoxy, so incredibly strong, but also already peel plied on both surfaces. Now I did actually investigate making it, and if you have a look at it nice and close there, you can see it. I mean, it's pretty thin. This is 42 millimeters each side, so you've got plenty of surface area, and all I need to do is run an epoxy adhesive on that, glue it onto the hull, job's done. I did actually investigate the idea of making it. I was going to vac bag them, I was going to infuse them, I was going to press them. I may still do that because they're not cheap. These are about $42 each per length, and a 2.4 meter length. So convenient length because it's sort of the same size as most sheets of foam or plywood or whatever. So if you're building a boat, I mean, you can save yourself a ton of time here. This is going to totally eliminate the need for me to do underfloor tabbing pretty much through the entire boat. So I've ordered 100 meters of it, and my box has just arrived and it's here, and I've already started cutting it up and putting it on the bulkhead. So you're going to see pretty rapid progress, because tabbing the bulkheads is a stinker of a job, as we all know. This is going to solve us a lot of problem. Now, by ordering 100 meters, I think that's probably going to be about half of what I need, because I'm going to start using it on bulkheads in the works. You know, I'll basically use it wherever I can. It's going to be difficult, particularly up in the front of my bow, where it's going to be small compartments and a bit hard to get to. All right, so I've got 100 meters of composite angle, which, you know, pretty much, as I mentioned, is only going to do about half what I need it to do. I had a number of ideas. I was going to use methacrylate adhesive, which I've got you know, cartridges of, and they do actually do their glue in a cartridge form. The one that they recommend is this Techniglue R60. It's a 2-pack, so it's a 2-to-1 ratio. I've got a 4 litre version here, 4 kilos, and then another 2 kilos or 2 litres by volume here. 2-to-1 ratio, and then you just put it into a glad bag or into a cartridge and administer it just like you'd be piping a cake. So I think that's going to be a winner. That's going to save me like tons of time, and the great thing about it has good gap filling properties as well. So, and it has good holes, vertical holes. So when you put it on, I just put these angles on, tab them in place around about 20-minute gel time. Which is sensational for this sort of work, because it gets done quickly. Within a day, you've got a full cure, and then you can start, you know, moving forward. And I guess that's why the boat builders have chosen to use this stuff, because of just the rapidness with which you can use it and apply your product and move forward. And that's the key to boat building production. Well, that's it for another week, guys. I'm done. I've just had a pretty big morning this morning. As you can see here, all the floors are in. I've used that angle, and that's all coming up in later episodes. My motors have arrived, and that's going to be coming up. That was pretty exciting, I have to say. And I've just spent 4.5 hours with the Jabsco rep working out our plumbing solutions, and we've decided that we need to have 2 totally independent systems, one on each side. So effectively there's 2 complete ecosystems, one on each side of this cat, as a cat should be. Unlike sharing pumps, we don't want to be doing that. We want to have redundancy.
and yeah, lots to come. So just subscribe and give it a like if you like the episode, and I'll see you next time on Life on the Hulls. Thanks for joining me, guys. Catch you later. See ya.